Great, Chris. Well, listen, thank you so much for taking the time and the trouble to come and speak with me today.
No problem.
It's great to have you here. You don't normally do interviews, do you?
No, this is my very first podcast.
Okay, cool. And just for those people who don't know you, don't really know your journey, I'd love to start there.
Yeah, how far do you want to go back?
Well, as far as you like.
I'll take it back to the very beginning, because obviously I get to shed you in a really positive light here, and at the start of the podcast there's no way I can do it. I fell into a state agency, and yeah, luckily you were my area manager at the time, and you saw something in me that I didn't even know I had at the time, and as went quickly through the ranks at Countrywide. You and I set up Best Sweets franchise, which turned into Preston Baker. Someone then said that the streets are made of gold in London.
Yeah.
When I went down there, not particularly as well as I thought. And then I got a call from David Plumtree asking if I'd come back. First answer was no, and then he said, let's just meet for a coffee.
Yep.
And then he had me at Hello when we met up. And yeah, I ran the North and Scotland whilst living in London, so I commute for 4 nights a week, which was 80 branches. 80 branches turned to 250 branches with Countrywide South.
Yeah.
So I ran that for 2 years, and on the 25th of January this year, Helen Charles was asked if I'd be the Chief Operating Officer for the Connells Group.
Just over 40,
Yeah.
You've made it to now one of those senior jobs within a state agency. And there's so much to unpick. Now, obviously, we go back a long way.
Yeah.
And, I was lucky enough to work with you early in my career, lucky enough to have you as a business partner at one point in our shared career as well. What do you think are the qualities or the behaviours that you've exhibited which have allowed you to make that progression?
It's difficult describing some of the things that you've been told about yourself.
Sure.
Saying it is not the most comfortable thing to discuss, but I think one of the things for me is a genuine care for people. Every role I've had, my leadership style is try to be in service of people, not the other way around. So where you don't historical parent-child relationship with management, I tell you do, you're here to do as I say.
Yeah.
I sort of try and always flip that and go, actually, how can I make their lives easier? What can I do to take the problems off them, to make them flourish? I think the responsibility that I had in the roles I've had is to make sure every person I've come into contact with have tried to fulfil their potential, and I've helped them try to do that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, from the very first time that I met you back in Shipley, in West Yorkshire.
Not Freudian slip.
No, indeed. You've always exhibited like that huge ambition. Hugely ambitious ever since I met you. And unlike most ambitious people, you have the work ethic to back it up. And one of the things which I really want to get out of today is to try and explore with you what it's like to be the leader of such a big business and to try and work in the environment which I see today as an independent estate agent owner myself, which is an environment where the whole world around us is changing incredibly fast. And for all of us who've ever been involved in change, what we know is that it's really hard to change something really big.
Yeah.
So since you've been in post as the Chief Operating Officer, I mean, do you guys see that world the way that I do in terms of a world which is changing fast, or like how do you see it?
Yeah, I think I've been lucky enough to be in small independents. So me and you built a business together. I've done it with my wife. I've seen it from the hybrid model. So I think a lot of the corporate stages of the past were always institutionalized. So they only ever saw the world in one way because they've been in it for 20 years. Yeah. And that's not a bad thing, because with it you get some real continuity of the business. And I think having the view of seeing all aspects of a estate agency, you sort of learn naturally pretty quickly that the one way of doing it there isn't a right way. Yeah. It's about the people. That's all estate agency is about. But what we are moving into is a digital era where actually technology used to be a tool, and technology has to be an enabler for our people now to make them fulfill their potential. If we're making it hard because of the processes we put in place and the tools that we give them to use, then we're a blocker to success. In the same way with customers. We're a really customer-centric business. We're looking at it through the lens of the customer and say, actually, how do we interact with that customer today? What will we interact with that customer like in the future? And what barriers to entry do we have with those customers? And what tools can we create with technology to make that easier, and then also make it easier for our colleagues to transact with that customer? Yeah,
well, that's fascinating. And because you touched on the independent estate agents there. So one of my feelings from talking to independents, over the last 20 years throughout my career, has been that in general they're quite dismissive of corporates and the standards of corporates compared to independents. Now, how do you sort of respond to that in terms of independents looking at their local countrywide or Connells brand and saying, well, we do it better?
I think if you looked at our brands in those towns, we'd probably say we do it better. So it's perception of the person rather than actually the reality of either way.
Yeah.
And there's some towns where we have number one in market share, we're totally dominant. There's towns we are 14, 15, 16th, we're also ranks.
Yeah.
And all of those things, it's always in transition. So whether it's the person who's running the branch, and it always comes down to the person running the branch and the people within it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what branding you've got, what technology you've got. Actually, if the people are really passionate and driven, they will make that branch a success.
Yeah.
And it's about us putting the decision making back where the information is.
Okay.
And making branch managers feel like branch managers again. And
What does that look like practically?
small decision making, things like the area manager doing all the recruitment for the branch manager. And I think we moved to a position as a company where a lot of the decisions were made from the epicenter. So now we're trying to push that decision making back through the business and allowing people to actually have some freedom to make some of those decisions, but within a framework that we've created.
Yeah.
And I think what we're starting to see is that accountability and responsibility taken back by the branch managers and back by the area managers, because we're actually saying, well, how do you want to do it? What's the right way for your town? And we're sort of helping and shape the decision making rather than telling them.
Could you give a tangible example of, where you push decision making down to like a local level?
Yeah, things like where we do maintenance. So maintenance was always done at a central function, so we would potentially have people driving from Newcastle to Exeter to paint a wall, a cost which would be obviously too high.
Yeah.
So we've set up a new matrix where the local MDs have decision making on anything up to a certain level.
Yeah.
So maintenance work that need doing, whereas before we would go from branch manager to area manager to divisional managing director to national operations director. So that decision making is ridiculous.
And that is ridiculous, isn't it? And when you think about that, you can imagine the frustration at a local level where they're thinking, oh my God, this is taking forever, I just want to paint a wall. Do you know what I mean? And I guess the closer you can get that to any information, is to use your term, I think that's hugely important.
Because then what you get is battle fatigue.
Yeah.
People then stop telling you that the outside needs painting and the fascia needs doing. They stop telling you that there's problems with the IT because nothing gets done.
Yeah.
So why do I keep doing it?
Yeah.
So I think with the that pushing the information back where the decision making is, we are starting to get some more ownership of some of those problems. We're not there yet. But I also understand how we got there as a business, because when you see a business of our scale, 1,200 branches, and you see a problem, sometimes it's very easy to start managing down to that problem.
Sure.
And then you find another problem, and you just keep going and you keep eroding it. And all of a sudden you wake up one day and say, how have we arrived at this time when to paint a wall in Scotland, the MD's got to sign it off of the company?
And one of the things we were sort of chatting about before we sat down to record this is this sort of idea that for most estate agents in the UK, they're independent and they work in a single office branch, and that constitutes the overwhelming percentage of estate agents in the UK. And the number one decision that they agonise over is, am I going to be able to maintain the standards in branch 1 when I open branch 2? And that decision, I've sat around tables with independent estate agents where they've agonised for years, literally years, over that decision. And then when you macro that up to 1,200 branches and then say, I want to try and run this at scale, the scale of that challenge is almost incomprehensible. And that balance between how do I have a command and control system where people aren't making stupid decisions in Glasgow versus enabling people. And, that is the big, I think, independent estate agents, and why should they think about it? But they don't think about it when they then consider, what that role was like for you and for Helen and the other people involved in running that Connells business. And how do you keep that balance fresh? Who are the most important people? Is it the regional directors? Is it the branch managers? Who do you see as, the most important cohort for you in terms of quality?
I wouldn't say there's a most important cohort. What I would say is that having been an area director and having had some fantastic area directors and divisional directors as well, I think there's a responsibility that sometimes it gets overlooked, because our responsibility, and the only responsibility, is to get those people in our span of control to reach their full potential.
Yeah.
And what that doesn't mean not doing one-to-ones, walking past things. That he's a great guy, so I'm going to let that person slide. It's actually saying, I care enough about you to come and help you and support you. And where we've got people might think that are being managed tightly. Sometimes it's the way that you look at it in the lens that you look it through. Because if I drive 45 minutes to get to a branch and I'm going to spend the full day there and sit with the negotiator and support the manager and go on a listing with them as an area manager, is that management, or is it I care enough about you to come and help you, support you to be the best version of yourselves that I can be? And I think sometimes area managers just turn into number chasers, not through any fault of their own, but the culture and the environment that was created.
Yeah.
Your pledge, target, what you're going to do, how you're going to get it, where you're at with your numbers, instead of dealing with the inputs. Because actually, manage activity, numbers just take care of themselves, so just forget the number. Yeah. But to come back to the question, I think every single person is as important as the next.
Yeah.
If we're not empowering negotiators and making them feel great about working for the Connells Group, they're not going to give us the very best version of themselves. And that goes all the way up. And then looking at it, actually, am I in service of these people? Am I doing what I can in my role to get them to be the very best version of themselves?
Okay, that's really interesting. If you're going to give one piece of advice to an independent estate agent who is thinking about scaling their business and moving from a single branch to two, from 2 to 4, what would be the thing that you would advise them on to make sure that they can keep the consistency across multiple sites?
I would homegrown my own branch manager for the person to go take that. And now I did it in the corporate world. I was lucky enough and supported by the business to open 6 cold starts for Barter Marks in London.
Yes.
And of those 6 cold starts, 6 of them went to a branch manager that we'd created from within.
Yeah.
So we have a program called Rising Stars where we look at the very best people in our business at negotiator levels, and we say, actually, who are the branch managers of the future? What can we do to create them? So I would often create a branch manager before there's a branch available. So what does that look like in reality? So things like, there was 3 girls I can think of, Caris, Amy and Stacey. They're all 18-year-olds, started as negotiators. And I picked what I described as a parent branch. So I said to the manager, I'm going to give you these 3 people and you need to give me branch managers in 18 months because I'm going to go on a cold start operation. So the role I played is I met them for half a day once a month, and we got a whiteboard up and we said, look at the numbers, what's the problems, what levers can you pull, how do you do it one-to-one, why do we one-to-one? So we got them thinking like managers before we had a branch for them. Yeah. So my advice to any independent would be, if you've got people in your branch that you think's got stretch, create the role you want them to do, not the role they're doing. So don't manage them to that, manage them to the future.
100%. If you give people the answer every single time, you create dependency. Yeah. And they don't grow. So what's the alternative to that? How do you get people to learn those new skills, but without an unacceptable risk?
I suppose that's the risk tolerance level of the business owner. It's a difficult one. You're sort of giving them the car to drive with your foot hanging over the brake pedal all the time. You can't not. You let them make mistakes is the honest answer. All the while that they don't make that mistake and learn from it. Now, obviously, if it's things like mail or things that are regulatory, then you have to make sure that the guardrails are there. But if it's things like employment, and I've sat down with people in the past and said, I'm not sure about that person that you want to bring in, but that's their decision. As a leader and a manager, you will live and die by the decisions that you make. So if I keep making the decisions for them, it's easier to work. You pick that guy or that girl, not me. And that's why it's really important. I think that autonomy is there, but within the framework, and you actually sticking with them all the way. Observations, making sure they can do the things that you want them to do and the way you want them to do it. But no one's ever finished. Everyone's always learning. There's always things you can do for development.
Okay, great. Let's talk about another topic which independent estate agents, I think, generally do poorly, which is financial services. Obviously, it's a huge topic in the industry at the moment. Most independent estate agents don't do it. Or do it really badly. What's the trick?
I think it's ownership, Peter. It's a joint responsibility. Is most appointments, so they have to be the branch manager, they could be the negotiators. We have obviously regulatory responsibilities through managing through the line, through mortgage services. But you've got the support mechanism of the area director, of the divisional managing director, making sure that all of those things work in unison. So we don't work in silos, we work in partnerships. And it's a collective goal to make sure that we give the customer the choice at every opportunity that we can. They will make the decision whether they want to come and see us or whether they want to use us. But it's just creating that culture that actually you've got a mortgage broker sat there that you will have a relationship with, that you care about. I either going to offer that support to that person or I'm not. And actually, It's just working in partnership with people and building those relationships that ultimately lead to success. And it's all about time, care, trust. You know, the more time you spend together, the more you trust each other, then you may end up more caring about each other's results. And it's just a joint collective purpose rather than I only get spoken to about sales and you only get spoken to about mortgages. Rather than saying, actually, we've got a joint collective responsibility here. How do we work as a business with the very best in relationships to ensure that we all get what we want out of it?
Yeah. So one of the things which we put into the business quite recently is just a text message which goes out there when a customer books a self-service viewing, so they've spoken to no one, so they've completed their journey end to end. We send them a text message saying, here's Jeff, he's the mortgage advisor for this office, would you like to book an appointment? And we launched that a week ago, and we launched 2 different versions of it, and over 70% of customers click on that thing.
Amazing.
Now, the point being is that we're offering the right service at the right time to the right people, and they click on it. And, you know, a lot of independent estate agents have this view of financial services as like a dirty word, and we're estate agents, we shouldn't be doing that. We need to be helping support our customers. And, you know, and you know, in all of the businesses, you know, we've got our business Feel Good Financial, and obviously you've got your mortgage services. It's just so important. And the only reason that you can't do financial services in this business is if you don't ask people if they want it.
Yeah.
If you ask people if they want it, even if you do it in a really unsophisticated way, people will say yes.
Of course, so it's the biggest financial purchase anyone's going to make.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't they want to make sure they've got the best deal in the current marketplace and it suits their needs?
Yeah.
And I think it's just about customer choice.
Have there been any big initiatives which you have put in place in your tenure which have changed the way that people work?
A couple of things. So we've harmonised the working hours. So we've reduced down to 37.5 in the Connells Sequence business. That's given on average about 5 weeks a year back to the people. We've put a predictive dialer into the gem business where we've got 208 colleagues in Dunstable that try and generate market appraisals and other opportunities for us. And what we've seen there is transformational. So they were dialing linear and they were trying to find a number, dial a number, leave a voicemail, try and find the next one. And our talk time has gone up 40% the daily since we did it. Our average outbound calls have gone up 250%. Our callback diary is now 300% bigger than it was because we're getting hold of more people. We're getting to data sets that we've never been able to get to. And what we've seen is the attrition in that contact centre go from circa 60%, which is not bad for a contact centre, down to under 40%.
Wow.
So again, people are getting sticky feet. They're staying with us for longer because we're giving them the tools. So again, that leadership in services, we've got people here that are working so hard for us for 8 hours with inefficient tools to do the job that we're asking them to do.
Yeah.
Now what we've done is we've given them the very best in technology and they're going, actually, that is really good, and they're staying with us and their earnings are going up through the technology that we've given them. So that was a big initiative. We introduced a trial for flexible fees, obviously something that we've discussed since 2017. And that's gone really well. All that is giving them the customer choice. And at the moment we're getting about 40 to 45% of vendors that we speak to taking that choice. I think that will just get better as we continue with the trial. But yeah, it's an interesting finding so far.
So in the pilots that we've run in other companies, say yours and others, we see about 50% adoption within the first 3 months. At Preston Baker, it's up to about 70 to 80% adoption. And so there's no doubt that there's more which will be done. And I'm sure that what you found is you've got some people who are absolutely nailing it, and you've got some people who aren't participating. If there's an agent out there who's trying to implement something like flexible fees, and you've got a cohort who are like in the non-responsive group, like how would you go about tackling that?
Yeah, we've definitely got some learnings. I think with any new initiative, you've got to over-indexing your management of it to make sure it gets traction in the very infancy.
What do you mean by over-indexing?
Over-indexing would be making sure that I am supporting in a way that I would normally not support. Okay. So what I mean by that is, if I'm an area manager, one of my branches is on the trial, I will be going to that branch, right, what MAs have we got in the diary form book, how are you going to pitch it, tell me the words you're going to use, let's come out and see you do it, I'll do it, you can watch me do it, we'll get it wrong together, we'll learn as we do it. And then you just keep over-managing that, over-managing the wrong word, but over-supporting it. Yeah, I want to come back next week, let's see how we're getting on. If you spoke to Johnny down the road who's flying, let's get you in and go observe him. And create the activity around it to make sure that it's a success. if you allow someone to feel nervous about it because it's a new thing and they don't do it straight away, or they do it once and actually it's uncomfortable for them, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
So then it's, okay, when is the intervention from me as the area manager to say, well, no, come on, let's not stop doing it. How are we going to do it better? You come and watch me. I'll do 3 MAs today, and you can watch me fail 3 times, or watch how I do it.
Yeah.
And it's just that support mechanism to get people over the initial nervousness of the new thing that we've given them to play with.
I mean, I think one of the big differences when I think about the corporate and the independent sector is that the corporate estate agents have got more structure in place for support. You know, people who've got no operational responsibility themselves, whereas the independent estate agency leader, a lot of them in relatively small businesses, still are on the tools.
Yeah.
They're still doing client-facing work. And actually, one of the advantages that you guys have got is that you free these people up to just do observations, just do feedback, just do coaching. And so that strength of that AD demographic is so important. Have you seen any changes in terms of customer behaviour with the introduction of flexible fees? Has there been anything from the early signs where you've seen, you know, how the customers have responded to it?
Yeah, it's very early days, but we're seeing a marginally better sales rate. We're seeing a better withdrawal rate. So, you know, we're getting stickier clients. So they've obviously opted for unlocking some discount on the front end. And what we're finding is that actually those people are staying with us rather than withdrawing and potentially going on with other agents. So you get that stickability, and that's certainly helping.
And I think, to be honest, if you've seen that at this moment in the market, then as obviously the market continues and hopefully improves as we go to next year, we'll see those numbers improve even further. Okay, great. So are there any other big bits of advice that you would give to other independent estate agency leaders who maybe are considering a big change?
It's difficult to try and put myself back in that environment. If I'm honest, I can only look at it through the lens that I'm looking at right now, which we're going through a huge digital transformational change, and I'm lucky enough to have a fantastic infrastructure around me. You know, Tom Perry, the CIO, is just phenomenal. He's the new Steve Jobs in my mind. So I'm lucky enough to have these people around me that we all work together and actually make sure that the decision is right. So there's often things where it's a feeling. So how do we feel about something? And actually what we need to do then is go, do the facts back up the feelings that we've got? And I think that's something that's really important, because something might look great and we feel really good about it, but you've got to do the work to make sure the data backs up the feeling. And that's the advice that I'd give is don't be sold to a certain degree. Make sure that you've done your due diligence, that actually it's going to do the things that you want it to do.
So you've been in post since January of this year, and it would be fair to say that you've had some really difficult stuff to deal with. And I don't think I would be doing my job right if at least I didn't touch on that. And we spoke at the time when everything kicked off over the summer. And I'd just love to maybe just get a bit of an insight for those people watching about what it was actually like on the inside, dealing with like a curveball like that, which just comes in and suddenly all of that attention, unwanted attention, coming onto the Connells Group. How did that feel personally to you? And also, how has that been part of that as part of the team?
It was just off the back of the roadshows that we'd done, and they were exceptional. And the way that the business was feeling at the time, the way that we talked about the business transformations coming down the line, the technology, the enablement for the staff, and where we're going to take this business. And like any crisis management, we had to act quickly, make sure we get ahead of it. We got a team together, right? Who's responsible? Who's got the A, as Helen would say, and then we just managed our way through that. But the thing that stood out for us really, really quickly was actually, this is happening to a human being. This is happening to a branch manager of ours, and how do we then wrap our arms around that person to get them through this? They've been thrown into the spotlight. The very next day after it was aired, the programme, I drove from my house in London to Abingdon, 2.5 hours to make sure I was there to field anything. Didn't want the branch fielding any questions for us as a business. I wanted to be there to front it and make sure that actually, if anything did come in and they did have the questions, I'd be the one answering those and protecting those staff. Rob Jenner, the divisional marketing director, was there at the time, and the area manager was there at the time. We made a conscious effort to make sure that whilst we were going to make and do internal investigations to make sure that actually what had been aired, we need to make sure that we learn from some of those things, whether that be culturally or process driven. But we had to make sure that actually we got a woman that's been thrown into the spotlight, and we need to make sure that we wrap our arms around her, get her through that, as well as the other branch staff at the time. And I think that was incredibly important that we did that and showed that support for the business.
yeah, I think just from a human point of view, it must have been an incredibly tough time for all of you. And yeah, I think, you know, I really hope she's been able to sort of put that back together.
You know, we have a zero tolerance policy on any of those things like conditional selling. You know, we invest a huge amount of money and time and effort to make sure that we have the very best training in place, to make sure that we have the right tests and regulations in place for the branch staff, to make sure that actually we do everything we possibly can to make sure these things don't happen.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you know, it happened, but we just had to make sure we took the business through it,
Yeah.
and make sure that we learn culturally, you know, and make sure that we make sure that those things don't happen because they don't believe they need to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's really important to us.
Yeah. No, well, listen, thank you for talking. I really appreciate it. So, Chris, if you had a sort of magic wand and you could change one thing about the industry,
I think it's the way it's perceived. I think there is some phenomenal people in the estate agency that work incredibly hard, are so customer centric and passionate about delivering for the vendors, the buyers, and all of the other clients. And sometimes the perception of the industry is that it's really easy. And anyone who works in the estate agency knows the hours you've got to put in, the passion you've got to have, and the resilience. And I keep coming back to it, the grit, and actually a level of humility that, you know, when no estate agent ever gets things right all the time. And it's actually like, how do we learn from it? How do we push forward? But I would love for the general public to be really passionate about their estate agents and what they do for them, because I think we do a great job. And sometimes I think that's overlooked.
And so why do you think that is overlooked? Why do you think that the customer, so the general public has this perception of agents?
Not having an understanding of what it is that we do, so we don't tell the customers what we do in the right way, I don't think. And also there's been obviously barriers to entry in historically. This technology has now started to come down. Things like you had to ring and speak to somebody a lot of the time and you can't get through to them, and actually what they're doing, I never hear from them. Where actually technology offers up a lot of those solutions now to the client, so they can self-serve at times that suits them. And obviously that then they can demonstrate and see the number of outbound calls that you made on a property, the emails that have been sent out, the matching that you've done, you know, the calls that you've made, and actually they can never see those things before, because actually you could tell someone, but they go, well, actually, have you done the thing that you said you've done? Are you just waiting for right move to send an email lead? And that's not what the job is. It's about giving customers the choice, supporting them through it, giving them advice all the way to the point where they get completed.
It's a fascinating problem, isn't it? And often we talk about making the invisible visible. So, you know, showing them our working out in terms of what we do. I just don't think we're very good or very effective at that. I often also think that people get the estate agent that they deserve. And so if you want to go for the bargain basement low fee agent, then guess what? You're probably going to have a poor experience. And if you're prepared to have the confidence as an agent to charge a premium fee and to not be differentiated just on your price and to deliver a correspondingly good service, then I think, customers enjoy a much, much better experience. Okay, one final question for you. Connells are involved in Project 28, as are Preston Baker, and we're both sort of signatories to the charter. So just for estate agents out there, what is the Project 28 all about, and why have Connells got involved?
I think it's really important that the Connells Group, with 10% market share, historically we would keep our head under the parapet and actually let things happen in the industry, and we're sort of changing the way that we view our role, and we really want to support and help create a better environment for all the estate agents as well as ourselves, to make sure that we make it easier for customers to transact in the housing market. At the moment it's 6-7 months from the point of putting on the market to getting moved, and what happens then is that people have seller fatigue, so they then don't want to move, then it's going to be difficult to move. So the easier we make it as an industry for people to move and transact in the housing market, the more people will transact with the housing market, so then volumes will go up for everybody. And then it's around what is the flow of information. So how do we get the material information at the very beginning of the transaction? How does that flow through the chain to make sure that actually there's not pockets of friction all the way through, and how we can create and solutionize that, I think, is really important.
So one of the observations that I've made as part of those conversations about Project 28 is that, just think about anti-money laundering, is that I do an AML check with my estate agent, I do an AML check with my lawyer, I do an AML check with my lender. I'm doing 3 anti-money laundering checks, and they aren't transferable often between the 3 parties. I mean, straight away, that's got to be a way to reduce friction.
And that's just one example. We could find probably 2 or 3 or 4 examples where that happens throughout that customer journey. And then it's just taking those points of friction away. And I think the more points of friction we can take away where the customer has to do something themselves, rather than do it once and that flow through the whole journey, it's just always going to be more difficult. And actually that seller fatigue just keeps kicking in. I've got another lot of paperwork to do for the solicitor. I've got now paperwork to do for the lender. And it's actually, why can't we just do these things once at the very beginning and that just flow through the journey?
Sorry.
Everything will be a lot easier.
Okay, amazing. So Project 28 is definitely something which, if independent estate agents out there would like to get involved in, Landmark have been the primary drivers of this.
Yeah.
And certainly people could direct message me and I can point you in the right direction to get behind this and get signed up to the charter. And the 28 stands for 28 days, which is where we want to get this back to. I remember in the days when all repossessions, you had to get done it within 28 days, all corporate instructions.
So 3% pipeline turn in a 4-week month, 37 in a 5.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. So Chris, thank you for taking the time and trouble to come and meet with me at these. I hope everyone's got some really actionable insights. To achieve everything that you have by the age of 41 is an incredible achievement. I'm really excited to see what you achieve next in your career. So thank you for making the time to come and chat to me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.